It was April 9th, 1972, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Bill Giles was panicking. The next day, his plan would finally be put into action. The three-act show for the season's home opener would be taking place, the result of months of planning and the recipient of thousands of advertising dollars. Giles, a top executive and eventual owner of the Philadelphia Phillies, had set out on a mission to promote his baseball team in any way possible, no matter how strange. The Phillies were bad. They had finished the season prior 67-95 in last place in the NL East, and had not finished with a winning record since 1967, 5 years prior. Despite the product on the field, Giles needed to sell tickets. And so, he spent the offseason planning this big opening event. Big events were his specialty. But Giles wouldn't get his show the next day, because the players went on strike.
The Phillies regret to announce that because of the strike of the Major League Baseball Players Association, today's game between the Phillies and Pittsburgh Pirates has been canceled, and that future games have been temporarily suspended.
The show was meant to begin with a 25-minute comedy and musical show by 1,200 Mummers, a historical group of elaborately costumed string bands who parade down Philadelphia's Broad Street every New Year's Day. After the Mummers, the batting orders would be introduced, and the anthem would be sung by local crooner Walter Rinaldi. This would be followed by a 15-minute fireworks show, which cost the Phillies a whopping $2,000. And then the pièce de résistance. With the assistance of wings, a man would attempt to fly for 500 feet from dead center field to home plate. Kite Man, as he was called, would deliver a baseball to Tim McCarver, the Phillies' backup catcher. McCarver would hand it off to Mayor Frank Rizzo, who would throw out the first pitch. With the strike blowing up his first plan, Giles, in a frenzy of phone calls, furiously figured out the logistics of a delayed planned bash 2 days later. The Mummers could move to the new day. Rinaldi could as well. Rizzo was ready. Kite Man, however, was a bit of a problem. Giles had read a profile of 21-year-old Jeff Joby, better known as Kite Man, in Sports Illustrated the previous October. He had been looking for a way to one-up last year, when he had the opening day ball dropped out of a helicopter flying above the stadium. So he hired Joby, and, at Joby's request, spent $5,000 to build an 80-foot ramp placed on top of the right field seats. The Phillies promoted Joby's appearance in the newspapers for months, trying to sell tickets. The high flyer told the Standard speaker, "People have been experimenting with kites for years. I merely perfected what others have done." And it was true. Joby really was a standout kiter, regarded by some as the best in the country by a decent margin. But when Giles called the esteemed stuntman, Joby said he would not be able to make a delayed show because he would be in Cozumel, Mexico, teaching Mexican President Luis Echeverria how to water ski. The man that had kiting perfected was no longer available for Giles' stunt. But they had already advertised it. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Kite Man. Somebody was gonna have to jump. And so, Giles began his search for a second Kite Man, coming up empty in the yellow pages before finding John Williamson, a man from suburban Paoli, Pennsylvania, about a 40-minute drive from Veterans Stadium. Williamson told the press that he did not need the ramp. Instead, he was going to start his flight in the center field parking lot of the stadium without a motor, using a running start to sail over the 110-foot wall and land all the way at home plate to deliver the ball to McCarver. As Giles wrote in his autobiography, that sounded pretty cool. But when Williamson was set to go on a practice run, he backed out of the endeavor, citing the crosswinds as dangerous. So, Richard Johnson, also known as Dick Johnson, the third Kite Man, was flown in from Clearwater, Florida. There, he was performing in the popular Cypress Gardens water ski show, doing a Kite Man act of his own. When he arrived, he was offered a practice run by Giles. Johnson responded, "Mr. Giles, if I'm going to kill myself, I want someone other than just you watching me." The players' strike ended on April 14th, and the Phillies opened their season on the 15th in Chicago, playing 2 games against the Cubs before returning home to Philly on the 17th for the home opener and ensuing Kite Man festivities. The Phils won Game 1 against the Cubs 4-2. The second contest, on the 16th, did not go as well.
There's strike 1. They sure are. That's a strike. 0-2. A no ball, strike 2 count. Strike 3! It's a no-hitter! A no-hitter for the kid, Bert Hooton. And look at him grab him. Bedlam at Wrigley Field. What a way! What a way to start the season.
What a way to start the season indeed. With their tail tucked between their legs, the Phillies came home. And at 6:45 the next evening, the 1,200 mummers sang and danced. At 7:20, Walter Rinaldi sang the anthem. And then it was time for Kite Man. All of the players leaned forward in the dugout. They say he's doing it for $500. No way I'd do that for $500. My life's worth more than that, mused shortstop Larry Boa. He's crazy, muttered left fielder Greg the Bull Lazinski. Wow, said backup outfielder Byron Brown. Bill Giles is making a salary drive on this one. What does he do for an encore? Asked a writer. Blow up the stadium, said Brown. A 30-second announcement bellowed through the stadium. Never before seen in a major league stadium, the world-renowned Kite Man will fly high above the stadium to deliver the first ball of the 1972 season. Here's the Kite Man. A drum roll played. All eyes turned to Richard Johnson at the top of the ramp in right field. He did not move. A portion of the Philadelphia faithful, not exactly known for their patience, began booing Johnson. Thinking he had not heard the announcement, Giles had them do a second. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kite Man is summoning the courage to take on this death-defying stunt. Here's the Kite Man. Another drum roll. Still no movement from Johnson. The boos intensified. Giles got on the walkie-talkie with Paul Callahan, one of Giles' sales guys who had been stationed in right field. Does he hear the PA? Asked Giles. Yes, he hears it. The problem is that he's scared to death. He's frozen. But Johnson gathered his wings and his courage, took a deep breath, and went for it.
The fans were optimistic. And so was Kite Man. However, this aborted flight was a portent of things to come for the Phillies' 1972 season.
Careening down the ramp, a gust of wind pushed the Florida man sideways into row after row of empty seating. He hit a railing, hard enough to knock it out of cement, and crumpled into a pile of kite and goggles. I thought he was dead, Giles said later. Callahan rushed to Johnson, figuring he had at least 2 broken legs and possibly a broken back. But underneath the pile of flight-optimized fabric, Johnson stirred. He got to his feet. He was being paid $500 to get a job done, damn it. He needed to get that baseball to the glove of Tim McCarver. And so, standing in the middle of the 500 level, Johnson leaned back and threw it as far as he could, hoping to reach McCarver on the field below. The ball landed in the Phillies' bullpen. The boos became deafening. Somehow, Johnson escaped the incident largely unharmed. I was surprised I could walk away from it, he told reporters. It was one of the narrowest escapes I've ever had. Giles told the Philadelphia Daily News, "We blew it. The first guy said it was no sweat. This guy looked it over yesterday and said, 'This is sweat.' The guy showed me a lot of guts," said McCarver, who later became a longtime national broadcaster. The way he got up and tossed the ball after what he's been through. The Phillies lost the game that day, 5-4 against the St. Louis Cardinals. They finished 59-97, last in the National League East. In the seasons to come, there would be other kite men, some who failed and some who succeeded. But perhaps that is a story for another video. Like and subscribe. Have a good one.